Okay, so welcome again to today's session. Let's dive into it. So I do hope if at any point you stop seeing my screen, do let me know. I am recording already. Um, this is week 5, and today we are discussing Agile methodologies overview. Introduction to Agile methodology, Agile manifesto, Scrum framework, Lean startup methodology. Um, Let me say this. I want everybody to remember that. I want everybody to remember that when it comes to product management, a lot of what we do is actual project management, right? Which is why you will hear a lot of terms that would originally be used for project management in product management. And for every product you are trying to manage, what you are doing is like it's a project, and you are trying to manage it and to be responsible for seeing it from development up until its launch. And that's basically what happens with project management. And that is why there is a lot of cross functionality between project management and product management. The only difference is that when it comes to product management, what you are managing um, is a digital product and not just like any project, And for example, civil engineering projects are projects, and managing them and seeing them from development and creation and ideation to launch is project management because they are just projects. But the concept of product management is tied to digital products. It's tied to software products, and that is where the paradigm shift happens. But the methodologies that are used for this are the same methodologies that are used for project management, except that you learn then how to apply those methodologies to software, right? To software development. That's basically the difference for projects between project management and product management. So you use a lot of project management skills in managing your products. And agile methodology um, is a popular project management methodology, and there is an agile manifesto, and of course under agile we have scrum framework, right? And there is another methodology that is a lean startup, and we will discuss all of them today. So I would be attempting to breeze through this because we spent a lot of time on the assignment. I just felt like the assignment was should have been such an easy win for everybody. So it was kind of disappointing that it wasn't, and I felt the need to over explain it, so that most people would also understand why they failed, what they failed, or why they won't be getting any points for it. Um, okay, so introduction to Agile methodology. Agile methodology is a principled approach that is designed to guide and improve how software development teams work together to deliver new applications and updates in the shortest time possible. Okay, so when you talk about agile methodology as a product manager, the first thing to remember is that you're thinking about time, right? For every situation where you're attempting to build a product, um, it's very important that you understand that your role when it comes to agile methodology is to catch up with time, to manage every role and tie every role together in the shortest amount of time possible, right? Your goal is to ensure that time doesn't beat you, instead that you beat time and have more time to test even. So um, in agile software development, the product owner plays a crucial role as the key stakeholder, representing the voice of the customer or the end user. They are responsible for defining and prioritizing the product's features, managing the product backlog, and ensuring the development team delivers value with each iteration. Remember what iteration is. Iteration is going back to the what do you call it, to the blackboard, and collecting feedback and coming back to the product, um, and upgrading or improving on the product based on the feedback, which is where you have the customer or the consumer feedback loop, where you have information on the feedback from the consumers, sorry, or on the users, and then you come back and you make an improvement based on the feedback. That is basically your iteration. And 1 second, I want to read from here so everybody's clear. Okay, so product iteration um, refers to the process of making successive versions or improvements to an existing product based on feedback, data, and market demands or customer feedback, right? It's like this. Like I said, you have your MVP usually, and you put it out to your control live. A few people that you want to take a look at your MVP, you get a feedback, and then with their feedback you go back to your MVP, which is the blackboard or like your board, your thinking board, and you go back and you make decisions on what needs to be fixed based on the data you received, the market demands, or the feedback, like direct user feedback that you've received. You go back and you fix it, and you make successive or following or feature improvements based on those feedbacks. That's what your iteration is. So iteration is just basically working on feedbacks and improving your product based on feedback. Feedback could be from anything. So yeah. And the product owner plays a crucial role as a key stakeholder. So as a product owner, you're the primary stakeholder. Um, you the responsibility to defend your product, to manage your product backlog. That means prioritize. The whole concept of managing a product backlog is to decide what is a priority and work on that based on your prioritization, which is what we discussed last week and we did an assignment on. Um, the whole concept of prioritization is working with the resources you have available and ensuring that you manage the resources in such a way that it spreads out to your most important features only. There is a focus on your most important features. How do you know your most important features? Your prioritization lists, your backlog management, right? Um, it is also your role or your responsibility to ensure that the development team delivers value with each iteration, right? That you're not wasting all these meetings and feedbacks and information collection, and that for every feedback you receive, data you receive, market demand you receive, you are able to use it, put it to good use with the development team. The product owner works closely with the development team to communicate requirements, provide clarifications, and make decisions to maximize the product's value and success. So with every demand that you receive or feedback you receive, it is your role or your responsibility as a product manager to change that to a requirement that needs to be achieved with the product or within the product, right? It is also your role to know how to communicate with each team or with each stakeholder within the team you're managing, and to make it a clear cut requirement that they can understand based on their skills, right? Like it becomes your responsibility to understand each team that you have to work with and how they work in regards to your project or your product. And then it becomes your role to give a clear communication in such a way that nobody is confused as to what is being achieved. I'll give you an example of that is that during stand-ups, I do hope everybody knows what a stand-up is by now. A stand-up is under the Agile Product Management, or Scrum, sorry, it's under Scrum, but Scrum is under Agile methodology. Um, something you do is like a 15 minutes morning call, morning meeting, where everybody on the development team comes to give feedback on what it is that they are working on and how far they've gone, or the pushbacks they are receiving, the roadblocks that they are facing, or the acceleration that they are experiencing in their process. Just anything, you're giving feedback so that if you need help, and also it also helps you get the recognition that you need within your team as well. If you're excelling with ease, it's okay to mention that too, but that's not the goal. The goal is to address problems. That's the primary goal. To address problems and have the product manager reach out to whomever needs to be reached out to based on your feedback and all that, right? And during that communication, during all of those, you have a lot of meetings as a product manager. You need to find a way to ensure that none, none of the information that you're trying to deliver as a product manager is lost in transition, right? During these meetings, for a lot of stakeholders, they also have several meetings they have to attend. You need to ensure that the information that you are giving them becomes the primary information they experience every day. For example, after the stand up, you want to reach out with the CTA, the call to action from every meeting. So if you say that the designers are going to compare old designs with the new with the with the projected design for the particular this new product, you need to you need to write it down and create like a checklist for them with the CTA that you give them. So that CTA is just a response from like a conclusion from the held meeting, right? Like we've held all these meetings. How did we conclude this meeting, right? What did we finalize from this meeting? What you do is that you present every team or every particular stakeholder, every individual that will be working on that project with the conclusion of that meeting, what their responsibility is after that meeting, so that when they are presenting it to you next time, they are reading from the CTA that you listed for them. In that way, when they give you their CTA and they're checking it off their list, nobody is lost in what needs to be done. There is no confusion from in the meeting, but we said by 3 p.m. We said I would deliver this by 3 p.m. and it's just 2:30. That confusion doesn't need to happen. If after each meeting you send everybody their CTA. Now is it could it come up a little bit tasking to you? Yeah, but what would you rather have? Taking the extra, say, 10 minutes to create CTA for everybody after the meeting, or having having a feature that has been built from misinformation and having to go back to the chalkboard again and starting from scratch again. So I feel like it's lesser of evils. It's such a little thing to create a CTA for everybody from your last meeting. It helps to keep everybody on their toes, and it makes it easy for them to understand what you are saying to. And when you send it to them and like they feel like this is not part of what we discussed, I'm now confused, then you have the chance to discuss this before they start to work on what they are supposed to work on. That's part of your information clarification and communication tactics that you should think of adopting. Um, and remember, the entire goal of everything you're doing is um, product value maximization. That's the entire point of everything you are working on. So the key concepts of agile methodology is one, collaboration. The success of an agile methodology or an agile team is that it indicates that different people in the project, like the developers, the managers, the analysts, and even the customers, all work together to achieve the project's goal. So this keeps everyone informed and avoids confusion about what needs to be done. Collaboration also allows everyone to share ideas, which can lead to better solutions and decisions. I want you to remember that meetings are not just meetings, right? Um, you're the center person for each meeting that is being held or that will be held as a product manager. And your goal is to tie everything together, to bring everything to a center, and finding a middle ground for everybody to, like, that middle ground is the business goal, making sure that everybody is aligned with the goal of the business, the goal of the app, right? And if that is the situation, it needs to be done in such a way that when you're collaborating with people, you're influencing them, you're pushing everybody's work just towards the same goal, right? Everybody, designers are designing, um, developers are coding, but what are they working towards, right? If you start to put two and two together, if you start to put the design and the codes together, and they don't seem to make sense to gel in the way that they will function on the app, then you have been wasting your time. So you have to remember that everybody can do what they are doing, but the reason that you are there is to tie everybody's responsibility together towards the same goal. And that is the collaboration. Through every meeting, you're making sure that the collaboration is effective, and it's not just wasted meetings. It's that these meetings are leading to something. We are taking notes, we are making edits, and we are fixing problems. That is the whole point of all those collaboration meetings, and that is how you make an effective collaboration. Continuous improvement is the ongoing process of analyzing performance, identifying opportunities, and making incremental changes to processes, products, and personnel. By analyzing and fine tuning processes, your company can save time and deliver an overall better product. So, I'll give you an example of the process, because I think everybody understands, like, fixing or improving your product from feedback already. That's the continuous improvement in general about your product. But something to remember is that it goes beyond that. There is the identifying opportunities, for example, API integrations, or just business collaboration between you and an external stakeholder. You feel will give you a partnership that will be useful through the life cycle of your product. You need to be able to manage, identify the opportunity from that, because people will come and pitch their businesses to you and the advantage of their business to your app, right? You need to be the one, usually the product managers will be the one to think about this from a business angle, which is why we said as a product manager, your business acumen needs to be high. So it falls on you to think about what has been presented to you and identify the opportunity in it. And I also identify within yourself how to properly manage this opportunity and manage this partnership. And then the changes to processes, when it comes to, for example, with Kuda has a business analyst for every product that you are iterating on or that you are collaborating on. The business analyst is there to observe. The goal of the business analyst is that they are able to streamline processes. When we say streamline processes, you're trying to make the processes more conclusive but more effective and efficient, right? You want a quick process, a less strenuous process, but at the same time, you do not want to lose quality in trying to achieve that. So that is what the business analyst does. But for a lot of product managers, they have to do this themselves. Some companies or some firms are not fully established to that extent. So you will be sometimes saddled with the responsibility to analyze the processes and the flow of process for your new product and decide if it makes business sense and what to cut off from the process, right? If you say you want someone to upload a selfie when they are trying to sign in, or when you're onboarding a new user for your banking app, for example, but you feel like, for example, if it's time to take the selfie, you don't want them to the concept of them shaking their head 3 times or like rolling their head 3 times to show that they are alive is outdated for most software now. And you're deciding that you don't want that to be a part of the process anymore. You just want them to look in the camera and maybe blink, just a blink. and the camera will be able to tell if they are humans or not. And there are software that have upgraded to that extent. So it now becomes your responsibility as a product manager to find a partnership with people that will provide you with that software or with that API to make that happen. But at the same time, it also becomes your responsibility to find out to what extent you are able to you're going to be able to streamline this process and still maintain quality. So if you take out one thing, is it going to make it less efficient? Is it going to make it possible for fraudsters to manipulate the process and get on board with you and start duping people and bring bad reputation to you? You see how far your thought process has to go when you're making these decisions. So while for in some cases you would experience a very established firm that has different people for different positions, business analysis and all that, you might not be so lucky and you have to make these decisions and have these meetings and these conversations by yourself. It becomes your responsibility to see that your the improvements that you're making is not just limited to the app itself, because then you're also limiting your entire business process as a development team. So you want to also look at your business process in itself and make better decisions. So that is part of your continuous improvement. Coordination. Coordination involves the process of organizing, managing tasks, and to ensure that the project is delivered on time within budget. In Agile methodology, coordination is achieved through the use of iterative and incremental development cycles. These cycles involve breaking down the project into small, manageable tasks that can be completed in short periods. Okay, so remember how I talked about sprint, having a sprint, and a sprint is just how long, the amount of time you want to spend on the development of a new product. And part of like what you do in that sprint um, is that you decide, like when you're doing your sprint planning, what part of what you would do, the big part of what you would do is that you will decide who will do what, right? So you've decided with who is someone that I can, who is someone that a team I can okay, let's say you've decided with the design team. I think they are the easiest people to use for examples. You've decided with the design team that this is what we want for our UI to look like, and because this is the experience, the user experience we want. This is therefore this is what the UI should look like, and this is the decision you've come to. But then this is just a conversation you've had with the entire team. You need to ensure that at the end of that conversation during the sprint planning, that someone has been assigned to that decision that you made with the team. So we've said that this is what we want and we've all agreed that this is the best way to go. The next question is, who in your team is working with me on this product or on this project, right? And then when they give you that, you know this is the person I am working with. And then when you go to Jira, for example, which is a project management tool that allows you create tasks and tickets for the tasks, what the ticket does for you is that for every update you make on that task, the person makes on that task, they can go and update it, and you can see the information on that update, right? And even before, sometimes even before they come to the Scrum meeting, they are able to update their ticket and show you details of what they've done, and you can read it and approve the update, or you can say, no, let's discuss this further. So the goal is that after each cycle planning or each sprint planning, you have who, how, and when, right? Who is doing what, how are they doing it, and when are they doing it? This will be explained in the tickets that you will create for them. With Jira, if that's what you're using, some people will be using Trello, it depends. When you make that decision, you create tickets with that will be assigned to particular individuals. Remember, I didn't say to a particular team, I said to a particular individual. So if you come to a team and they say there are two people working with you on this particular product, they need to tell you who is doing what, between those two people, right? You might need to have a different meeting with those two people so they can delegate that tasks between both of them and make a decision on who is doing what, and then tell you like how they are going to be working on these things and who is taking on what. So that is what the coordination depends on you. You're the one coordinating the tasks and being clear about who is taking on what and how they are expected to take that on, and etc. Like, it's just everything about, if you don't know how to coordinate tasks, or um, if you feel like even at home you don't really know how to break down responsibilities. If you say, for example, your mom is about to have a women's meeting in the house, and it's a big compound, and you need to clean up the entire house. Some of you live in mansions, and you need to clean up the entire house, and you need to break down. Say you're the first child, you need to break down to everybody what their role is. If you struggle with this, then it's something that you need to sit down and ask yourself, how do I fix this skill for myself? Because it comes in handy in your responsibility as a product manager. Most of what you will be doing is people management. Always remember that. And if you screw it up, you could make people um, butt heads and have a lot of disagreements because you're unable to make decisions about coordination. So coordination is basically having on a clear information on who is doing what, how they are doing it, and when they are expected to deliver. That's what coordination entails. There's a mention of budget, but I wanted to know, for the most part, as a product manager, you are not um, you are not necessarily you're not necessarily directly involved with what do you call that? Not necessarily directly involved with the budget, right? It will be brought to you from time to time. The finance team could say, when you say we need a front end person, and the finance team could say we don't have the budget for this. It's not necessarily that you, as a product manager, you need to go and start calculating. Um, we have this income, and then we have this profit, and then we are able to hire this. That's not necessarily what it is about. Your concern with budget is usually based on the information that has been provided to you. So it's not for you to go and create the budget. It's for you to understand the budget, the breakdown of the budget, like if we say we don't have a budget for this role and you want to ask, explain. If it's explained to you, you need to be able to understand it and work with what has been explained to you. That's where the budgeting comes in for you in conversations. So communication. Agile thrives on clear and frequent updates. This is a very big part of what you'll be doing as a product manager. That's why if you know any product manager and you check their calendar, I can't, I don't have my calendar on this device. If you check their calendar, you will be seeing a lot of meetings, a lot of stand-ups, a lot of sometimes it's the beginning of the month and you check their calendar, you would see sprint planning for the end of the month. That means that particular product timetable ends at the end of the month and they have to create another product from next month. So that sprint planning meeting is to make decisions for the next product, and that's what the meeting is for, but it's already pre-scheduled. So you'll be having a lot of meetings, and the goal is to keep up with everybody, from the stand-up daily stand-up meetings to sprint planning to just general collaborative meetings or coordination meetings to coordinate everybody's tasks and gain clarity. You'll be doing a lot of communication, and beyond meetings, you'll be doing something I usually do is this. I use AI to take down notes during all of my meetings. And the reason is that there are some times that you run into situations where documentation will be your only savior, right? Proof of what was said in a meeting, or a decision that was reached in a meeting, or a decision that your senior has made in a meeting, and maybe they don't remember. It's not necessarily about somebody trying to set you up. Sometimes people forget that they said something, and you assume that they will always remember this because to you it was very important. But because they had a lot of other important things on their desks too, this was no longer a priority to them, so they forgot. and this could put you in trouble if you don't have a documentation of it. So for all of my meeting, I have them. I have note taker for Google Meet. Take notes for of all of my meetings. So for every meeting I have is in a written form, and I'm able to refer to it in case I need to. Sometimes it's not just proof for something. Sometimes it's just I don't really remember how exactly we concluded on something, and I want to go back to it to see. So it's my own self-regulation. It's like I task myself with ensuring that I cover all bases, because I don't want to something that has been decided in a meeting that you clearly said you understand, and then after 2 days you're reaching out to someone for clarity when you could have just taken note of what was said. So, and I don't have the time. I don't always have the time to start writing everything one at a time. So sometimes I just allow the note taker. I just allow the note taker write down the information for me, and I can go back to it. There is an AI tool that is called Note Taker. I think. Um, 1 second. Let me try to Google it. The name is Note Taker. Note Taker AI. Yeah, Note Taker AI. That's the most popular in the industry, but it doesn't have to be that one. I think because it comes with a free package, that is what makes it popular. Note and Taker AI. You could just Google it and create an account and all that. Um, for everywhere that I have worked in, they didn't give me access to Note Taker. I created my own access and created my own account for Note Taker. And for every note that I take for every meeting, it is sent directly to my email. And funny thing is that I have had a VP reach out to me asking for help with the note that I took during the meeting. And that was how I started being close to a VP who was high and mighty and inaccessible to people, but she always felt like I was someone, a go-to person for resources, basically. So you want to set a standard for yourself outside of everybody. You want to set a standard for yourself that you are very efficient in your role. That is what all these tools help you with. So note taker is it just helps you take note of every meeting. During the meeting, you share the link with the AI, and it automatically joins the meeting as you. Like you will still be in the meeting, but it will join the meeting as well, and then it's taking note of everything that is being said, and it will be forwarded to you at the end of the meeting. And yes, don't worry about the accent, whether it's understanding the accent or not. It actually does understand pretty much everything that is said in the meeting. So I'm just giving you an example of how to equip yourself for communication. It doesn't have to be note taker or note taking in any way. It's just an example for you. So this is Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto is a document that identifies 4 key values and 12 principles that its authors believe software developers should use to guide their work. Formerly called the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. Okay. So formerly the Agile Manifesto was called the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. That's a long name. So Agile Manifesto makes more sense. It was produced by 17 developers during an outing at the lodge at Snowbird Sky Resort in Utah. The 4 key values include individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Um, Even without explaining this to you, I think it's kind of clear, but let's go into it. Agile places Agile places a strong emphasis on human interaction and teamwork, right? I think I've mentioned this over and over again. Your ability to interpret, your ability to interpret codes or to even code, your ability to design or understand design features and all of these things, they come second to your interactions, to your ability to connect with individuals, to collaborate, and your ability to use tools, your ability to use Notion, your ability to use, say, in our situation, Telegram or Google Classroom or whatever. Um, Actually, they come second to your ability to communicate properly with people. and influence people's decisions to come on board with you or with assisting you in making your app or your software product a reality. So it says here it values the contributions of individuals and recognizes the effective collaboration is the key to success, right? Um, Again, the point is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It values the importance of human interaction, the importance of human communication, human collaboration, and teamwork over processes. Whatever process you have streamlined, whatever tools you're equipped with, they come second to your ability to communicate and interact with people on your team and outside your team. The second one is working software over comprehensive documentation. Remember how I have said a lot about documentation. You need to have a clear cut documentation that anybody can look at and have an understanding of it. And I have said it over and over again because most companies require you to document everything, right? And it's also good for you to have documentations for references for your stakeholders to also look at without needing to ask you a lot of questions. It saves you a lot of time. But here with the Agile Manifesto, one of the key values is that a working software is comes um, as a priority over comprehensive documentation, meaning that as long as you have a documentation, it's more important that you have a working MVP or a working software, a functional software, more than it is important that you have a very comprehensive documentation. So, when you're working on your software and doing your iterations and all that, your iterations and creating a software that works trumps any comprehensive documentation you're trying to do. So if there is a meeting, a collaboration meeting that is scheduled, you cannot cancel a collaboration meeting because you need time to do your documentation. In the scale of things, documentation places nowhere near a working software. So it says here, Agile prioritizes delivering functional, valuable products over excessive documentation, clearly stated. It encourages continuous development and iteration to create software that meets evolving customer needs. Customer collaboration over contract negotiations. Um, Agile fosters close collaboration with customers and stakeholders throughout the project. It values feedback and adjusts plans accordingly to ensure customer satisfaction. Okay, so here it's just saying that remember when we were saying one of the user research tools is your will be your customer feedback loop, right? You want to create a loop. By loop is like a cycle of feedback between you and your customers. And for established teams, this is done through your CX team, right? For an established firm, is your CX team that here's the complaints of your customers, here's the requests of your customers, and you need to create a process that allows for your CX team to share certain tickets with you, tickets that have to do with the functionality of your product with you. Because this is the thing with tech products or firms, they have a CX team that responds to customer needs. But usually, when a ticket is created by a customer, right, back end, what happens is that the response that is needed, they are classified under teams, right? Like you could have the fraud team. If you have a fraud team, say fintech, for example, you have a fraud team, and this is a report of someone has hacked my account or something, something. The CX team is usually not trained enough to tackle fraud. So there is a fraud team dedicated to this. The CX team, their role is that they are the first people to receive this and communicate with the customer to gather all information needed, and then they will share it with the fraud team. And then if a customer says, um, I'm not able to share receipts after I have made payment, and then there's a second customer, then there's a third customer, then this is obviously a functionality problem within the app. So what happens? This gets sent sent to the product team, not to the engineers. Nobody's allowed to communicate directly with the engineers besides the product manager and the head of engineering, of course. So what happens is that when complaints about the functionality of the app is received, it is then sent directly to you. This is how you create a feedback loophole. So when you join a team and they don't have a feedback loophole with the customers, you should request for that. I do not think any feedback um, is more important than the feedback you get directly from your stakeholders. And one of your most important stakeholders is your what do you call them, your customers. So you want to be able to create a loop. You want to create a loop that allows for you to directly have information about the dissatisfaction or the needs, the market needs, or the things that your customers keep asking you for, right? Sometimes it's not just dissatisfaction, it's just like a feature that you found that customers keep asking for. So what this value is saying is that having this customer collaboration is more important than contract negotiations. Having all these big contracts, all these big words, all these big and possible money making things, but having dissatisfied customers or dissatisfied stakeholders would actually still bring your product down or bring your market share down. But if you have satisfied customers, which is you can achieve through customer collaboration, then the possibility of losing your market share is so much more reduced. Um, the last value in the Agile Manifesto is responding to change over following a plan. So Agile embraces change as a natural part of of the development process. It emphasizes adaptability and encourages teams to respond to changing requirements and priorities. Okay, let me say this. It's important to have a plan. This value is not discouraging having a plan or making plans for your product or for your product process, right? A plan is very valid, is very important, but the whole concept of an agile methodology is that you're able to listen to feedback or a change request by a stakeholder that is valid, right? It needs to be a valid change request. And you respond by fixing what has been requested for on the product, right? And requesting that the code is made a different way or that the code and the repository is changed or tweaked or to fit this new requirement. The thing is, it's good to have a plan, but Agile gives you the room to step out of your plan. It gives you the room to think outside of the box where it is needed, right? It gives you the room to listen to valid change requests and respond to them accordingly. You don't have to be too attached to a plan. In fact, it's important that you are not too attached to a plan if you are leading an agile team. That's the whole point of having an agile team, being open to changes and updates and improvements. That's the whole point. So we have 12 key principles from the Agile Manifesto. Um, Remember, we talked about four key values and then we talked about 12 key principles. So some of the key Agile principles are meeting end users' needs with early and continuous delivery of work. Um, Please give me a second. I want to see if these things were explained. Okay. Meeting end users' needs with early and continuous delivery of work. Remember, for example, if I worked with OPay and we have a new feature we're trying to introduce to the app, and we've put it out there that on the 20th of September, we are going to have this feature. Maybe it's a trending feature that we've seen in the industry, and we've had a few customers ask when we would introduce that. and we make a promise to introduce this on the 20th of September, right? It's very important that when you promise something, or um, when something is expected of you, especially as a team, maybe not even externally, even internally, when something is expected of you, that there is a timeline you're following and that you beat the timeline, right? It says here that one of the key principles is meeting end users' needs with early and continuous delivery of work. So, mind you, when you're working with an agile team, you are there is a continuous deliberation on what needs to be improved on. So if you're hired by, say, Chowdeck, you already have a functional app, right? They have functional features. It's like, why do they need a product manager? Because there's always room for improvement with an agile team. And most software products use the agile team for their software development. There is always room for development, there is always room for improvement, there is always room to impress, there is always room to set the trend so that other people in the industry are running after you, right? They are chasing you to what do you call that? They are chasing you to catch up with the trend that you've set. I think it's important for me to mention that there are some assignment responses that I haven't graded, and the reason is that it was submitted quite late, but not before the deadline. So if you have an assignment that you submitted and you didn't see handed in late, they are queued here and they are very few. I think they're like five or six. I think they're like five. And I'll grade them after this class. So you have nothing to worry about if you've actually submitted it before the end of the deadline. But you submitted it too late for me to look at it. So I had to work before I came into this class. So I will grade them, is what I'm saying. So the second key principle we are looking at is being open to changes and requirements even late in the project. Okay, so while you're working on a project, sometimes the industry trend could change. This is an example. The industry trend could change, and something that used to exist would no longer would have been obsolete by the time you're done. And this could be in the space of 2 months, which is the highest usually that sprints take or product development takes. So it's possible that in the space of 2 months, a particular trendy feature for fintechs is no longer like trendy or useful because something else came out and has taken over. You should be very open to changing your requirements because there's now a new need for your consumers or for your users. So it's very important that you're open to making a change to your requirements, even if it's late in your project. Delivering completed work at regular intervals, preferably short ones. Okay. It's important that like um like a list of things you want to do, bug fixes and all that, that your delivery, like you're regularly working on something and that you're regularly delivering on intervals. You don't have to compile everything once and deliver once, right? From your backlog, you could do something, you could update something and launch it. By launch, I mean deploy, right? If you could update something or do an improvement, integrate and deploy. And you don't have to wait for everything in your backlog to be completely done, unless they are tied together. Like there are some requests that you cannot separate, and with that, even your backlog you shouldn't separate them in your backlog. They should be together as one request, right, or as one task to be accomplished. So in that situation, you make it one task and you accomplish it, and you launch it or you deploy it, and then you move on to the next thing and you deploy it, so that you're regularly working on something, you're constantly working on something, making improvements and showing that like you're being paid for a reason. So preferably it's better that what you're working on, that you give yourself short intervals to present or to show workings, according to Nigerians, to show workings. So working with the project team and business owners daily. Okay. It's very important that you stay in communication with the business team. We're talking about the marketing team, the sales team, the legal team, the finance team. Um, you might not have to be in communication with all of them daily, But when there are meetings, when there are conversations, you need to pay keen interest, like you have a big interest in whatever is being discussed, because for almost every business decision that is being made, it's reflected on your product, or the future of the product that you're handling. So it's very important that you're paying attention to all the feedbacks or all the business updates. For some teams or for some tech firms, they don't have these meetings every day. It could be two times a week, but you just need to make sure as a product manager that you are not careless with information gathering. You need to always have information on what is expected, even if it's not being said to you. Um, the other one is assembling a motivated team, providing them with the right environment and support and trusting them. Okay. So remember, something I would say is this. In my years of experience, I have been an active part of the hiring processes or the hiring process. I've had to be a part of the interview process for um, a junior product manager, or an intern, or a product associate. I was tasked with preparing questions for them or an assessment for them, and you have to, if you've been given the opportunity to bring your ideas as to how best to find out who best suits our team among all the candidates and all that, that is where you come in, and you talk about how to identify someone that fits most, or within your already existing team, it becomes your responsibility to ensure that they stay motivated. Something you can do is create hangouts. Ask your VP, ask your head of product for maybe a monthly hangout. The company might not need to pay for it. You could do it in such a way that it's around, because everybody's paid at the same time. Around the time that salary has been paid, you invite everybody for out for a hangout. Doesn't have to be alcohol involved. And the reason is that if we know each other, if we are cool with each other as a team, um, a little misunderstanding, everybody will just be like, because you know someone, if you have a brief disagreement with them, it becomes just that, a brief disagreement or creative disagreement, and that's just it. But especially with remote teams now, if you're constantly working with someone you don't know, a lot of tones are lost during texting. So if I'm sending you a Slack message, you could not, or you could misinterpret my tone and take offense to something that is not supposed to be offensive, or you could feel like I am dodging work because you don't know me. You don't really know my style of working. So you make assumptions based on what you think you know. So it's supposed to create an easy environment where people feel like they can communicate freely, and they can also be supported if they need help with something and all of that. So also, you're supposed to not be afraid to report someone on your team that is not delivering what they are supposed to deliver. For example, if the front end, one of the front end people on your team, constantly their tickets are not being closed or in progress, constantly their ticket stays in progress and never moving forward, and you have 4 weeks in 1 month, in a 1 month sprint, and within 2 weeks you've been in progress with your ticket, and you've done everything in your power to get it moving. What is showing is inability to accomplish the task. Might not be incompetence, might just be a gap in knowledge, because they might have just joined your team. Do not be afraid to ask for help from their team lead for them. So that's part of like ensuring that your environment is good and safe for the people that are willing to do their work or their job, and that no one else is pulling the entire team back. Because if I'm willing to work and there is constantly someone with excuses all the time, then I'm getting discouraged and we're not getting anywhere. Communicating face to face regularly. Okay. Something I usually do. I don't think I've ever worked with any on-site team. All of my teams have been remote teams. But something I ensure that I do is that we constantly meet face to face. We constantly have on-site meetings, when there are new updates to the features that we handle, I want to discuss it face to face first before we all go home and start working on it. So I schedule for each sprint. I have one sprint planning meeting physically, and the rest we can do from home. But that first introduction to that to the new product improvements we are making or to the new feature we are creating, I want to do it face to face. We meet each other. There is a renewed friendship, or there is a renewed familiarity, and the rest. It really helps with the motivation of the team and the communication of the team. So for the other six, principles, you can go ahead and research them. We don't have enough time. We still have 14 slides to go through. And feel free to ask questions as you read through them. The reason you're reading them is just to have a clear understanding of the Agile methodology and what it entails, and also the practicality of it. Yeah. So, Scrum framework. Scrum is a framework used by software development teams that use all the principles within Agile methodology to get work done. So, again, Scrum is a framework used by software development teams that use all the principles within the Agile methodology to get work done. Um, like I said, Scrum is a framework used under Agile methodology or used by Agile teams to get work done, basically. And the framework guides the creation of a product by focusing on high value and visibility of progress on product activities. The fundamental unit of Scrum is a small team of people, a Scrum team. The Scrum team consists of one Scrum Master, one product owner, and developers. So for some development teams, they have a very clear cut out responsibility for everybody. In other words, we have they could have a Scrum Master who manages all of the Scrum activities, and then there is a product owner, which is usually your product manager. And for some people, they even have product owner and a product manager, and then a Scrum Master. It just really depends on to what extent or how big the firm is, or how big the responsibilities are, and how much of attention is needed for each responsibility, basically. So, within a Scrum team, there are no sub teams or hierarchies. So you need to remember that within a Scrum team is a flat leadership style. Everybody is a leader in their own right. So you are not above anybody. Just like we keep saying that you lead by influence, because you don't have any authority over anybody that is in your team. You don't have any real authority. The only place you can exert authority is that you report. You report that someone is not getting their jobs done, and you present clear evidence that this is what is happening, right? That is the only time you could like show something like authority, but it's not even authority. It's just reporting that someone that you're supposed to be collaborating with is drawing you back. It's a different thing. So basically, it's a flat system, and you're not above anybody, and nobody's above you. Within a Scrum team, there are no sub teams or hierarchies. It is a cohesive unit of professionals focused on one objective at a time, the product goal. So, okay. The Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. They do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theory and practice, both within the Scrum team and the organization. So there are certifications for becoming a Scrum Master, just a Scrum Master. You don't usually always need that certification to be able to function as a Scrum Master, but you okay, you need it for the most part, but there are companies that assume that Scrum Mastery is a part of your skill as a product manager. And for most product managers, they have to get this certification, because of the way everybody just assumes that you'll be able to function as a Scrum Master. So if everybody's making that assumption, it's safer for you to go on by yourself and find this certification and take on this certification and knowledge, so you can function like whatever is thrown at you in your responsibility or your role, you're able to function in that. So it says here that it's also the role of the Scrum Master to clearly define the Scrum activities and explain that or make that clear to everybody within the organization. Um, the Scrum Master is accountable for the Scrum team's effectiveness. They do this by enabling the Scrum team to improve its practices within the Scrum framework. The Scrum Master is responsible to the organization in the following ways: leading, training, coaching, and the organization in the Scrum adoption, planning and advising Scrum implementations within the organization, um, helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact an empirical approach for complex work. Okay. Um, Basically, a Scrum Master, when it comes to product development teams, what they do is that they come in and they help with process streamlining, right? They help with responsibility definition. They help with um, collaboration. Collaboration is where we find out who is taking on which task and how they will be taking it on and all that. And they help with the daily stand-ups. They organize the sprint meetings and or everything that falls under Scrum agenda. Um, it also says here that they remove barriers between stakeholders and Scrum teams. The product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team. He or she is also accountable for effective product backlog management, which includes developing and explicitly communicating the product goal. We've already discussed this. Creating and clearly communicating product backlog items. So while you're creating your product backlog, it's important that you stay in communication with the teams involved, right? And ordering product backlog items. Um, so you, for whatever backlog item you have, it's your responsibility to place and like you're placing an order by making requests for I need like two front end developers to help me with this, or I need a front end developer to help me with this. That's what you're ordering. And then ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. This is part of your communication skills. It's not just about writing things down. It needs to be done in such a way that everybody has a clear understanding of what is being communicated. Then you have your developers. Developers are the people in the Scrum team that are committed to creating any aspect of a usable increment each sprint. They are responsible for the following: creating a plan for the sprint backlog, instilling quality by adhering to a definition of done. Okay, so when you have a sprint, a sprint is how do I explain sprint to you? A sprint is just a dedicated time to product development process, right? That means when you say a sprint, you're covering the activities to be done within. It could be a 1 month sprint, it could be a 2 month sprint. I think there are even 2 week sprints if you're working on just a feature. Um, in within that, you're defining who is doing what. You're defining what is to be done, and then you're defining what are the stages of status. You could have yet not yet started. You could have started. You could have in progress, and then you could have done. Right, depending on the project management tool you're using, and then it also says here that it's their responsibility to hold each other accountable as professionals. So Scrum events are key elements of the Scrum framework and serve to ensure teams are aligned on the sprint and product goals. So there are 5 Scrum events they include the sprint planning. I've mentioned sprint planning a lot. Daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective. So sprint review is just reviewing what you've done so far with your sprint, like and where you are headed. But sprint retrospective is okay. So let's follow the materials. Let's not jump things. So the sprint, this refers to the to a series of short projects or periods of software development work, which typically last for 2 weeks, but not longer than a month. It depends on the team. Some teams, sprints could last 2 months. It rarely happens, but there are times when sprints are broken into like something that is supposed to be one sprint will be broken into two, which essentially makes it two sprints. But at the end of the day, that sprint now lasts 2 months instead of 1 month. It depends on how extensive the work that is to be done is, but that rarely happens again. Essentially, all work done in Scrum are referred to as sprints. Here, work is done in the shortest time possible, as we discussed, so as to enable rapid feedback loops from all stakeholders. So, the less time you take to work on a particular development process, the more time you have to have it tested or observed or just to get feedback from your stakeholders, basically. Note that a sprint can be cancelled by only the product owner when the sprint goals has become obsolete. Yes. So you could have planned a sprint. Maybe you could, for a quarter, you could have 3 sprints planned, and you're just looking at while observing or taking note of, or just making updates to your documentation. You observe that the plan you had for one sprint has now become obsolete. You feel like it's no longer needed, that this particular feature that you were planning to work on, that you created a sprint for, um, is no longer needed and is useless at this point. You are the only one as a product owner that can retire a sprint or cancel a sprint. Sprint planning. The sprint commences with a sprint planning session, like I spoke about, in which the Scrum team discusses and plans the work that will be covered in a sprint. This is done to ensure alignment across board. So the Scrum team has remember who is in the Scrum team. You have your developer, your product owner, and your Scrum master. And it says here that your Scrum team plans discusses and plans the work that will be covered in the sprint. So you cannot make these decisions by yourself alone as a product manager or as a product owner or a Scrum master. It's very important that you involve all of your stakeholders, because at the end of the day, you don't get to decide for them, but you ask their input so you can reach a final decision. But you're also asking their input by setting boundaries, like we cannot have feedback on this eh, after 2 days. It has to be within 2 days. So by the end of the second day, by close of business of the second day, I should have an update on this. For example, these are all the decisions you make within the sprint, and they usually would have to work with your timeline unless it's absolutely impossible for them, and they will have to explain to you why and why you need to consider other options. For example, daily scrum. Here, the scrum team meets daily for 15 minutes to evaluate the stand up I was talking about. Some people call it daily scrum, some people call it daily stand up. The point of it is that it's such a short meeting that you don't need to sit down to do it. It's a 15 minute meeting. And yes, when you're working remotely, nobody knows if you're sitting or standing. But it's such a short meeting that if you stand up to do it, it lasts 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're done. It's just updates. It's just, this is what I'm working on. This is the pushback or the roadblock that I face that I need help with. And this is what I'm planning to work on today. That's just how it goes. And you, as a product manager or as a scrum master, what you're doing there is listening and taking note on where you come in or whom you need to communicate with about something, and how you're also checking what tickets that can now be closed. Usually you can close it within the meeting. Like while you're having that stand up, you can close, okay, so we are done with this. Now we can close this ticket and move on to the next one and all that. Or you now have to create another one for the person, for that particular assignee in particular. Um, Discuss 15 minutes to evaluate progress. Discuss any impediments in, like I mentioned, roadblocks are the same as impediments in task completion, and tweak their plan for the next day. Sprint review. At the end of the sprint, the Scrum team meets with stakeholders for a sprint review to analyze feedback from task delivery. Okay. Um, Sprint retrospective. The This refers to the internal meeting consisting of just the Scrum team, where they gather to discuss how sprints went and areas of improvement in the overall process. So with the sprint retrospective, it doesn't involve other stakeholders per se, just everybody within the Scrum team. And what it does is that you are discussing as an internal team, what could we have done better for this sprint, and how do we fix that for the next sprint. Basically, that's what your conversation is about. um, Scrum artifacts refer to documentation a Scrum team that a Scrum team and stakeholders use to detail information regarding the product being developed, product tasks and strategy, and steps taken to achieve product goal. So your Scrum artifacts are basically mostly your tools, your product management tools and documentations. But the proper way to say it is your Scrum artifacts. Um, the main Agile Scrum artifacts are your product backlog, which refers to a list of features, bug enhancements, feature requests, or working requirements needed to build a feature or product. Either build or improve. It's not just building, improve. It could also be to improve the product or the feature. Sprint backlog. This entails the product backlog tasks which have been scheduled to be developed during the next product increment by the Scrum team. So once you've decided that, once you have your MVP, remember your MVP is your minimum viable product. Once you have your functional MVP, you make a decision on what you want to work on for improvement, like what you want to do to maybe improve on your product. So your backlog, your sprint backlog is now like for this sprint we've scheduled that we would develop this, and it will be included in our next product increment or improvement. um Product increment. Usually, an increment is decided during a Scrum planning phase, and there's always one increment for each sprint. A product increment refers to the customer deliverables which are produced by completing backlog tasks during a sprint. Okay. Lean startup methodology. The Lean startup methodology is based on principles of lean and agile software development. It is the principled approach to product development which involves building products based on iterative experimentation, focused learning, and fast iterations. Remember what we said, iteration is just a feedback loophole where you're able to receive feedback and you improve your product based on that. Receive feedback, improve your product based on that feedback. The feedback could be from anywhere, but most feedbacks come from customers or users. While the Lean Startup methodology is a framework distinct from Agile methodology, they share some similar principles, which we will cover in the next slide. Eliminate uncertainty. The lack of a tailored management process has led many startups to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty, to abandon all process. Using the Lean Startup approach, organizations can create order, not chaos, by providing tools to test a vision continuously. It is about putting a process, a methodology around the development of a product. Okay, basically, what we're saying here is that what Lean does for you, even what Lean does for you, basically, is that it allows you to have an organized vision of what you want to carry out for your new product, right? Like it gives you direction. If you have a plan, then you have a direction that you're following, and you're not just working off the top of your head. And if you don't have a plan, usually the possibility that you will abandon a particular product is very high. And because of how much resources go into building a product or developing a product, you don't want a situation where your lack of planning, your lack of vision, your lack of documentation leads to, or your lack of thought out process through either lean or agile methodology. leads you to end your product prematurely. Work smarter, not harder. Lean startup methodology has a premise. Lean startup methodology has as a premise that every startup is a grand experiment that attempts to answer a question. The question is, should this product be built? And can we build a sustainable business around this set of products and services? Now, remember that a product is not a business, right? A product is a product, but a product keys into your business goals, right? And a product serves as the medium through which you provide solutions, and those solutions you're providing become the services that you render or the products that you are selling, right? That's what that is. And it's saying here that the question is the question is not, should these products be built, can we build a sustainable business around um, products and services. This experiment is more than just theoretical inquiry. It is a first product. If it is successful, it allows a product manager to get started with his or her campaign and listen early adopters, adding employees to each further experiment or iteration, and eventually starting to build a product. So it's saying that you're not asking these questions in a space. You're asking this question with a product or with the legacy of a product in your hands, and the goal is that you're going to build a business from like building these products. You're going to build a product that serves your business purpose, and that's what your goal is. And you're asking questions, the right questions that will help you understand um if your vision are realistic, or your visions are realistic, and if they key into the business goal that you have in mind. Develop an MVP. A core competent component of lean startup methodology is the build, measure, learn feedback loop. The first step is figuring out the problem that needs to be solved, and then developing a minimum viable product, right? Like we've always discussed. Your first product can function, but it is built in mind to be able to make updates to it, to have your final product, or to have your more aesthetic product. So you build your MVP to begin the process of learning as quickly as possible, and then you start to collect feedback or collect feedbacks and start to work on the feedback. Validated learning, the unit of progress for lean startups is validated learning. Once entrepreneurs embrace validated learning, the development process can shrink sustainability. When you focus on figuring the right thing to build, the thing customers want and will pay for. You need not spend months waiting for a product beta launch to change the company's direction. The Okay, so this is just saying that you are, when it comes to the lean startup methodology, especially together with the agile methodology, you're working towards creating an MVP, a functional MVP that solves a problem. But then you're also working towards learning through iteration, learning from feedbacks that you're receiving from your control life, from your customers, from the data you're collecting, from the data you're collecting from your data analytics tools that are linked to your product, and then using that data or all the information you've collected to make improvements. So your learning is very valid. Like the learning you're doing in this process is a very valid part of the process that allows you build a better or make better improvements to your product that will give you bigger market share for your business ideal. The main aim of the lean startup methodology is to build products that customers really want, minimize waste, and maximize learning and continuous growth. There is no lean startup without room for growth. That is the whole point. There is no lean startup without the goal to minimize waste, waste of resources, waste of information, waste of tools, and waste of skills. And then there's no lean startup methodology without empathy towards the experience of your customers. Okay, and this slide brings us to the end of our class today. And everybody read up on your materials and have questions for us for the next class. I'll start with questions from this class, from this lesson or this session, and then before we go into the next session. Um, Thank you all for attending today. Thank you, Joshua, for always being available to help. And this brings us to the end of our class today, and I'll see everybody tomorrow. Do have a great evening, everybody.